China Southern, one of the largest airlines in the world, has sent shockwaves through the aviation industry after making the decision to permanently ditch all of the Boeing 787-8 Dreamliners in its fleet. In a move that has gone against current global trends, China Southern's audacious plans reveal a deeper trend within the aviation industry and exposes the underlying issues being grappled by Boeing. What could this move mean for the future of aviation? Stay tuned to find out the answers. China Southern Airlines, the largest airline in Asia by fleet size, recently announced the decision to sell all 10 of its Boeing 787-8 Dreamliner aircraft along with 2 spare Gen X-1 B-70P-2 engines. This is a move that has shocked observers, as while other airlines are bringing wide-body aircraft out of retirement, China Southern is choosing to downsize on its own wide-body fleet. According to an official notice from the airline, the sale of the Dreamliners will be conducted through open bidding, and the airline will not accept any proposal which doesn't cover all of the aircraft and the 2 engines. The aircraft are expected to be delivered to its buyers before the end of 2026 pending board approval. China Southern Airlines is the largest airline in China in terms of annual passenger traffic and has hubs in Guangzhou and Beijing. The airline operates more than 650 aircraft along an extensive domestic network within China, while also offering international services to more than 170 destinations in 40 countries across the Middle East, Asia, Africa, Europe, North America, and Australia. The 787-8 Dreamliner holds historical significance for China Southern, as it was the first airline in China to introduce the aircraft back in 2013, marking a milestone in the nation's aviation industry. Not only that, the aircraft also quickly became a staple of the China Southern's Xinjiang operations. By 2018, the Xinjiang branch was in charge of 6 of the airline's 10 787-8S operating flights to major cities such as Beijing, Shanghai, and Chengdu. However, sentiments are changing, and China Southern is now looking to modernize its wide-body fleet in what is a significant shift in its fleet strategy. The move aligns with the airline's focus on simplifying its operations and optimizing fleet efficiency. Nevertheless, the airline isn't ditching all its wide-body planes. It still operates Airbus A330s and A350s, Boeing 777s, and even 18 of the larger 787-9 Dreamliner variants. China Southern's decision to ditch its 787-8 Dreamliner fleet, which was fast becoming a favorite, raised a few eyebrows. This was mostly down to one reason: they were relatively new. All of China Southern's 787-8 planes were delivered between May 2013 and June 2014, making the oldest in the fleet still less than 12 years old. This bold move by China Southern to sell a relatively young aircraft fleet has got people wondering why that has been the case. To find out, we need to dive a bit further into the situation. At the surface, the answer seems pretty simple. The 787-8 is the smallest variant of the Dreamliner family, which means it has the lowest passenger seating capacity and therefore the highest per-seat costs. Its engine selection is also less efficient than the offerings on its larger siblings in the Dreamliner family, and its maximum range is also the lowest. This makes the 787-8 less appealing to airlines who know they could invest a little more into the larger variants for better long-term gains. The 787-9 in particular has been the go-to option for airlines including China Southern, who are looking for that bump in seating capacity and operational efficiency. However, the larger variant of the Dreamliner isn't actually the only option airlines can consider. As a matter of fact, the larger Dreamliner variants might not even be the best options for China Southern. But before we get into what those options could be, there may be another underlying reason why China Southern is ditching the 787-8, and it isn't reduced efficiency or other operational concerns. This time it concerns the manufacturer of the Dreamliner, Boeing. Another significant theory as to why China Southern may be ditching its 787-8 8 is the present case of worldwide groundings for the Dreamliner. Since the 787 Dreamliner entered service, its Rolls-Royce Trent engine-powered models have struggled with reliability issues, which have affected the aircraft's performance for a decade. Back in the mid-2010s, there were concerns about the Dreamliner relating to blade cracking and corrosion-related fatigue impacting the blades of the Rolls-Royce engines, such as one instance found on a 787 plane in the early stages of 2016. Worldwide repairs could be initiated back then, but these days the global supply chain crisis has affected engine manufacturers around the world, particularly Rolls-Royce's Trent 1000 engines, which has continuously impacted customers of the 787. Worryingly still, Rolls-Royce has stated that it continues to have problems acquiring the raw materials required to produce parts for Trent 1000 engines. As a result, the number of new engines produced has seen a significant reduction, which has affected the output rate, and left Boeing needing a significant number of new engines to build its 787s and get them in the skies. However, Boeing isn't the only victim here, as airlines with the affected 787 Dreamliners in their fleet are also feeling the effects, with the repairs for in-service aircraft being delayed significantly due to a lack of spare parts and a massive buildup for engines requiring maintenance. Apart from its engines, the Boeing 787 has also come under scrutiny for a few incidents, which have exposed some of its design flaws, with Boeing at the forefront of the blame of this from many observers. The 787 Dreamliner is reportedly said to suffer from design flaws, such as fuselage joint gaps, and the behavior of its exterior carbon composite parts when subjected to certain conditions. The unconventional manufacturing approach adopted by Boeing for the Dreamliners has been blamed, as production relies on a global network of suppliers who build vital parts of the aircraft. Some suppliers can potentially cut corners in the manufacture of their parts, which make way into the final assembly with little to no oversight from Boeing staff. While the Dreamliner remains an impressive aircraft, it is now facing mounting scrutiny, and its position as one of the staples of long-haul travel is now under threat. Besides the groundings, extra maintenance exercises are having to be scheduled on Dreamliners, as airlines are being forced to conduct additional checks and repairs to ensure operational safety of the plane. Passengers are also becoming more wary of flying on Boeing planes, and this sentiment could get even worse with the recent news of accidents in 2025. Boeing's reputation is taking a hit in the process, and airlines other than China Southern may be looking towards acquiring a replacement for the Dreamliners in their fleet. But what could the Dreamliner replacement be? Along with its 10 787, 8 Dreamliners, China Southern also operated a tiny fleet of Airbus A380s, which it has since retired due to the COVID-19 pandemic. However, despite seemingly getting rid of a large proportion of its wide-body planes, China Southern doesn't seem to be eager to actually replace them. This is because the airline looks to be shifting focus to acquiring narrow-body aircraft instead. Narrow-body planes have seen an increase in popularity since the COVID era. This has particularly been helped by the fact that some new narrow bodies are able to fly distances previously only associated with wide bodies, which gives airlines a whole host of advantages. Airlines no longer have to worry about passenger load factor on certain routes. This has become navigable using narrow bodies such as the new Airbus A321XLR. These planes are also not just new, but make use of more modern technologies and more efficient builds, which make them cost-efficient and operationally viable for the next few decades. According to the International Air Transport Association, or IATA, global passenger traffic reached record levels in September 2024, but this was driven by strong transatlantic travel. In sharp contrast, Chinese airlines have struggled to return to pre-pandemic passenger capacity on long-haul routes, especially to North America, where recovery remains at less than 30%. For China Southern, the post-pandemic recovery rate for commercial flights in China has certainly been stronger for domestic markets. And although China is a large country, it's not large enough to financially justify wide bodies being the major way to travel within its borders. China also has one of the best transport infrastructure and connectivity on the planet. Its rail systems, especially its bullet trains, are reportedly so efficient that they have become a legitimate competitor for its aviation industry. Many people living in China, particularly the elderly, prefer to use trains to move across the country. This has cut into a potential segment of the Chinese aviation market. So despite the growth figures expected of the sector in the coming decades, it is still getting increasingly harder to fill larger planes regularly. China seems to be moving into an era of more flights, but with fewer passengers per flight. China Southern prides itself on prioritizing safety and operational efficiency, but the 787-8 Dreamliner may not be able to provide this at a consistently enough level for the long term. Interestingly, this sentiment may not be limited to China Southern, as some other airlines across the globe are beginning to make similar moves. Flag carrier for India, Air India, recently announced that it is holding off on exercising its outstanding options to buy additional Boeing 787 jets, along with the 737 MAX options. The airline's chief executive, Campbell Wilson, stated that the decision is set to remain that way until Boeing has cleared its massive backlog for the planes. Just back in 2023, Air India made a massive 220-plane order from Boeing as it looked to revamp its entire fleet. However, with the recent issues at Boeing, there is no telling when these aircraft will arrive. Air India's 270-plane order from Airbus may fare better, but the plane manufacturer also faces supply chain issues. However, the airline's order for 34A 351,000S and 6A 35900S may end up arriving before its Dreamliner orders. This could further hurt Boeing. Indeed, Air India's major rivals, Indigo, also has a significant order for the A350. This plane may well end up becoming the most popular wide-body in India at the expense of Boeing's offerings. While airlines increasingly reconsider their positions with Boeing products, the Rolls-Royce engines on the Boeing 787 fleet continue to present problems for those who have already made the acquisition. Air New Zealand is one of the affected airlines being forced to ground a significant proportion of its Dreamliners. According to the airline's forecast, the groundings will involve up to 6 wide-body aircraft from the 787 family. However, it has quickly moved to negotiate the lease of aircraft and engines to combat the aircraft groundings. Air New Zealand has also predicted an increase in the total number of affected planes to between 10 and 11 units by the second half of 2025. As a solution, 2 additional leased engines are expected to arrive by then to try to provide some coverage for the airline. Additionally, Air New Zealand expects its 2 leased Airbus A321 planes to arrive in 2025 to help compensate for the capacity which it has lost from the grounding of its single-aisle planes. The airline is also being forced to make changes to its global route network, especially those markets served by the Boeing 787 that make less financial sense given the restricted capacity. The groundings of these Boeing planes have frustrated Air New Zealand, especially as it announced in the past that it would no longer fly Boeing 777s and would instead rely strictly on the 787. That faith does not seem to have been repaid. The Rolls-Royce Trent engine issue is also affecting British Airways considerably, with 4 of its 787 Dreamliners having to be grounded. This has affected the airline's ability to serve specific markets, with its chief of planning and strategy recently admitting that the impact will be felt throughout this upcoming calendar year. One of British Airways' major concerns with the affected Dreamliners is the lack of certainty surrounding when engine complications will conclude. There is a lack of certainty about when aircraft engines will be inspected, when spare parts will arrive, and how long maintenance periods will continue. While British Airways has hope for an improvement in the situation, it still faces a challenge in sorting out scheduling and planning for aircraft reactivation, as it consistently receives mixed messages from suppliers and other parties. Vietnam Airlines, also affected by the Dreamliners engine issues, recently stated that maintenance for the 787 was blown out by over a month at a time, which means that re-entry into service has always posed a challenge and also thrown out operations and finances in the process. It has now been established that the 787 Dreamliner, particularly the Dash 8 variant, struggles with a number of issues which may or may not have led to their ditching by China Southern. However, looking closely, there may be an underlying trend which could have actually influenced the airline's decision. As mentioned earlier, China Southern's 787-8 sales is a contrast in the current trends of the wide-body aircraft market. While global demand for wide-body aircraft has surged, particularly in regions like the Middle East and Europe, the recovery of China's international aviation market has lagged. As a result, wide-body aircraft are often underutilized on domestic routes, leading to operational inefficiencies. However, China Southern's move to sell its 787-8 Dreamliners actually corresponds with a broader trend of Chinese airlines to phase out older wide-body aircraft in favor of newer, more efficient models. This means that China Southern isn't alone, and indeed more Chinese airlines may be following suit. Indeed, the 10 Boeing 787-8s being released into the market by China Southern are actually yet to receive any buy orders. However, the aircraft should be able to receive buyers within the speculated time frame. This is because the stubborn supply chain issues affecting aviation have persisted. Even though global trade levels are close to their pre-pandemic peaks, airlines are having to postpone and even reverse the retirements of their older planes, particularly the wide-body ones. As Airbus and Boeing struggle to deliver aircraft on time, the situation has become so tight that some airlines are left having to lease aircraft to meet the growing demand for flights. Additionally, despite its problems, the 787 Dreamliner still retains its global popularity and trust with some of the world's biggest airlines. But losing a high-profile customer such as China Southern is still a huge blow for Boeing. Boeing is trying its best to rectify things with the Dreamliner, but it could take quite some effort to restore it to its original reputation against its competitors. Maybe that is why China Southern has decided to jump ship. There has been some speculation as to where China Southern's 787-8 will end up, but it doesn't seem like they will be remaining in China if current trends continue. Ultimately, for China Southern, reducing the size of its wide-body fleet by completely axing the 787-8 Dreamliner looks to just be a response to the current market environment. Focusing on narrow-body aircraft could allow the airline to better manage capacity growth and align its fleet composition with market demand. What do you think of China Southern's plans to ditch the 787-8? Thank you everyone for watching. If you like this video, please remember to like and subscribe to our channel. See you next time.